Oh my goodness. The most fun thing about doing the message at 11:11 is getting to call Brad up and say, can we do this song? Can we do that song? I just get so excited I can't hardly think about what I should say. But anyway, thank you guys. Always the best. I brag all the time about this church I go to, where we hear this great music week after week. And so thanks to all of you, Brad, Mike, Bill, everybody. Thanks. It's a gift to us every time. Yes. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some have entertained angels, though they were not aware of it. Unaware of entertaining angels. Well, I know what we are aware of. It's scary out there. It's dangerous. There's violence everywhere. None of us is exempt from the possibility of somebody harming us. So locking our car, taking our keys, keeping our eyes wide open seems like a best practice, huh? Fear seems completely understandable and justifiable. And then there's the matter of broken hearts and hurt feelings, such common experiences for all of us. So of course we're going to hold each other at bay. Of course we're going to just skim over the top surface of conversations. We've been burned before. It will not happen again. And so we're going to guard our hearts and avert our eyes and keep each other far apart. Seems perfectly justifiable and understandable. And yet, and good the lights came up, there is this mysterious force that will not let us obey the law of fear all the time. There's something stronger than fear. And like the powerful pull of a magnet, we are compelled toward it. We are drawn to each other. Well, sociologists are telling us, and we've always known this, haven't we, that we are hardwired for love. We are hardwired for intimacy, for empathy. And so in the words of that great theologian, you were meant for me and I was meant for you. Larry, I just wonder, was it a little bit like, that song that Adam sang when he woke up and there was the other one?
Yeah,
Jewel.
Yeah, I think you're right. You were meant for me and I was meant for you. Something like that.
That's it. But you know what? That song that Adam was possibly singing was not just about men and women finding each other. That story's not just about men and women finding each other. That's about people finding each other. About seeing in each other that image of God. And so what God has joined together, we ought not so violently separate as is our practice as a human race. That song is not just about, and that story is not just about men and women finding each other. But it's easy to get lost from the ideal of loving each other. Easy to get lost from delighting in each other, from having our eyes open wide enough to actually see the image of God in the other. It's really easy to get lost from that ideal. And so it's good for us to hear that scripture again and to let the poets among us remind us of the wonder and the power of recognizing our innate connections. I like to call that recognition living hospitably. Years ago, I was going around doing a lot of lecturing and teaching in churches and other places on the topic of hospitality. And I began to talk about it in terms of not just practicing hospitality, but living hospitable lives. in our culture, many times we reduce the idea of hospitality to just private entertaining, dinner at my house, or yes, I've got an extra room. If you're traveling, go on, stop by. And we tend to see that through the colorful images of Martha Stewart Living, or, Better Homes and Gardens. Or maybe we even relegate the notion of hospitality to the hospitality industry. And we think about the Olive Garden, and we think about the Marriott and the diner down the street. And however good all of that is, and it is good, I think we know there's more to it than that. And so we want to look deeper. We want to think farther and look over and under and find more meaning. Living hospitably is a way that opens us up to giving and receiving so that we can experience our full humanity. And I'm going to come back to the notion of receiving in just a minute. But living this way is both easy and hard. It is simple and complex. It's inexpensive and it's costly, and it changes the world. It just does. How much different our lives are when we keep ourselves open to this giving and receiving of the divine image. Here's why living hospitably is easy. Sometimes it's easy because it's really not that big a thing. A few weeks ago, I was down at the main courthouse on Throckmorton delivering documents to the probate court. That's part of my job. And we were 4 or 5 of us were standing in line trying to go through the security check, right? And so the first woman, she throws her purse into the gray bucket and her keys, and she walks through the arch, and bzzz, it buzzed, and she didn't pass the test. So she backs up, and she's got to take her boots off. Yes, boots on a hot day. And beside that problem, she's got on skinny jeans, and so here she is. She's doing all this, and she's having a hard time, and we're all standing there, and just getting embarrassing, and, she keeps fumbling and almost falling, and she's nervous, and she begins to speak under her breath to us and to anybody who would listen. And she said, "I'm so sorry I'm taking so long." And finally someone said, "It's okay. Take your time." It broke the ice for all of us. She got her boots off. She threw them on the conveyor belt. We all passed the test, and we walked on through. I watched her as she sat on the bench just beyond the security check, and the woman who had comforted her sat down there beside her too. And I looked at them and I thought, it's almost like I could see this aura of kindness surrounding them and this energy passing through them because someone had decided to speak the hospitable language of comfort. The woman who comforted her got into Boot Lady's head and said, "I'm not going to let you suffer alone." It's as easy as that. But sometimes living hospitably is hard because it might mean that I'm going to have to sacrifice the approval of my friends and family in order to let someone else in order to let a new idea in. The situation at the border is a case in point. In view of the words of God about caring for others, welcoming strangers, loving our neighbors as we love ourselves, what are we to do with 90,000 children? And there's obviously opposing ideas on each side of this discussion, and on each side people think the answer is simple. Now our church and some of us as individuals have decided what we will do. But beyond giving and providing care, there is still the matter of how will we talk about it. Living hospitably should govern our speech too. The gift of free speech should never include the freedom to talk with pseudo-authority about things we know very little about. It should never include words that show disrespect and that fail to recognize the image of God in others, even those with whom we disagree. I'm stopping because I think this is doggone hard. When everybody's piling on, when everybody's got spouting words and offering clever cliches, it makes me feel important to jump in on the conversation and do my own verbal jabbing. Well, don't get me wrong. I think free and spirited conversation is great. It's needed, it's important. It does carry the ball down the court sometimes, but it becomes wrong and useless if those words are at odds with the respect that we owe to each other because of the image of God in each person. So, unfortunately, living hospitably has to do with how we talk. And I think that's really hard. Closer to home here in Fort Worth, not like other cities all over the nation, we're struggling with the issues of affordable housing for the poor and homeless. And we struggle, why? Because of a phenomenon known as not in my backyard. That's a phrase that refers to the resistance of neighborhoods allowing affordable housing projects that would provide shelter for those who need it. Yes, there are a lot of legitimate concerns and problems with this model. I get that. But I do keep wondering, what if we learn to live more hospitably? What if we learn to go down deeper than just friendliness and a little bit of goodwill? What about if it was a little more than $1 here and $1 there? What if we could go down deeper and engage other people on a human level, get to know them, have fun together, and let the contagion of living hospitably do its work? Wouldn't all of us be better then? You know, they say a rising tide floats all boats or does something. You know what I'm saying. I probably have that written down and I've lost my place. It's okay. These models of affordable housing do work in many places. When people are treated with respect and dignity, self-esteem rises, and we are all better for it. And though it's hard to live this way, doesn't it make sense? So, living hospitably is easy and hard, but it also makes us healthier and happier. I love this story by Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Outliers. It's about a group of Italian immigrants who came to our country in 1882. 11 of them set sail from their little town southeast of Rome, and they first landed in New York, but pushed westward to Pennsylvania, where they found work and they began to prosper. Over the next 12 years, a steady stream of immigrants came over, hearing from their loved ones about how great things are here. So they built a small town. They named it Roseto, after a village that they had left behind there in Italy. There was this doctor named Stuart Wolf, who taught at the University of Oklahoma Medical School, just up the road. He spent his summers on a farm in Pennsylvania, guess where, near the town of Roseto. So one summer in the 1950s, he was invited to speak at the local medical society meeting. After that speech was over, the local doc said, "Hey, let's go out for a beer." So while they're chatting, the local doctor says, "You know, I treat patients from all over this region, and I never see a person from this little town called Roseto under the age of 65 who has heart disease." Now, Wolf was very surprised about this. This was the 1950s, before cholesterol-lowering drugs and before all the aggressive attempts that we now have at preventing heart disease. Heart attacks were an epidemic in the U.S. at that time. And so Wolf wondered, what's different about Roseto? So he decided to find out. He hired students and colleagues to come and help him, and they gathered up death certificates, they reconstructed medical histories, they invited the people of Roseto to get involved in some testing. They were drawing blood and doing those heart tests, EKGs, and true enough, virtually no one from Roseto under 55 died of a heart attack or showed signs of heart disease. For men over 65, the death rate was roughly half of what it was in the U.S. The findings and the testing and the interviewing turned up that the people of Roseto were dying from old age. That was it. No alcoholism, no suicide, no drug abuse, very little crime. Old age, that was it. Investigations about diet and exercise showed nothing that would prevent heart disease. In fact, the one ill health issue that they were able to turn up is that some of the people in Roseto struggled with their weight. The Rosetans enjoy their food. And here was the key. They ate together. Rosettans were highly social people, as it turned out. They often lived together generationally in homes. They lived together. They ate together. They sat on their porches together. They organized all kinds of small groups to do good deeds. They started churches. All in this little town, they were deeply connected people. And so imagine with me Dr. Wolf and his team showing up at the medical convention to explain their findings. Others are presenting charts with DNA and genetics and physiological processes. And Dr. Wolf and his team are talking about what Malcolm Gladwell called the magical benefits of people stopping and talking to each other on the street. That's pretty good, I think, don't you? Living hospitably makes us healthier and happier. But back to the verse we started with. There's some interesting words in that verse. First, the word angel, Greek word, agelos, which means messenger. In the biblical context, a messenger could be part of the heavenly host or it could be a human. But these were messengers from God. And here in 11:11, we talk a lot about how we believe that God is present in each of us. So it makes sense to say that we are for each other, messengers from God. And the messages can be words, or they can be how we treat each other. Also notice, show hospitality to strangers. That's taken from two root words, philos, which means friend, xenos, which means someone you're not acquainted with, a stranger. And so when it comes down to us in English, it really says, be friendly to strangers, entertain strangers, show hospitality to strangers. Kind of pushes back against that whole stranger danger thing we learned in Bear-Stained Bear School, right? The dangers so noted. There remains a call to be awake and open to the wonder and to the needs of our fellow humans. So, okay, that seems like a good place to stop. Show respect and kindness to all people, even strangers, because you never know when you're going to receive a message from God. You never know when you're going to learn a great life lesson. You never know when you're going to be able to help somebody along the road. But I can't stop just yet because there's one other thing. Living hospitably is two-sided. It is not just about giving. It is also about receiving. At its best, living hospitably is like a fine dance. Pretty soon you don't know who's leading and who's following. And so, if my practice of hospitality means that I must always be the giver, I must always be the magnanimous one, I must always be the one giving help, advice, assistance, I've got the stuff, then actually I set myself up to feel superior to others. And I rob them of their opportunity to give and to share what they have. So, why not let a younger person tell me something I already know? Why not listen with interest and wonder at their discovery? I might learn something. It might be hard for me, but I might learn something. Why not let someone do something for us so they get the joy of giving? Why not be a little more vulnerable to our family and to our friends and our co-workers? Why not sometimes say, I don't know, you tell me? Why not ask more questions and give less advice? Why not empower people to do what they can? Of course, that'll be a little bit hard for us. But isn't that the way we want to be treated? Sometimes true human connection gets lost if I always have to be the giver. Leaves the other person diminished, and essentially it says, I don't need you. I think this stuff's all very hard, frankly. And we can't explode the boundaries of our own human capabilities. Nobody's good at this all the time. But I do think that we can knock some holes in the barriers that separate us. it's possible for us to break out of our own particularity a little bit and live more hospitably, not just from time to time, but as a regular path of our lives. Amen.